This happened in 2022 when I had moved to Jacksonville, Florida from my home state of Pennsylvania for school. I was there for only about a week and was going to parks around the area to feel the subtropical, swampy nature I had been obsessed with since I was younger. I was a 20-year-old male at the time and had not made any friends yet, so I was going to a new park every day all on my own. This was the first time in my life I was on my own, so I was dressing how I wanted, a crop top hoodie and some cute shorts. I considered myself a femboy. I have also always been told I looked younger than I really am, which may not seem important, but I think it plays a part into why this story creeps me out to this day. One day, I had gone to a new park in hopes to see an alligator, though I cannot remember which park it was specifically. I had just stepped out of my car and started toward the entrance of the park, which was a nice forested area with a welcoming wooden fence. There was a couple walking just ahead of me when suddenly a quiet "hey" came from my right. I ignored it, but then another "hey" came a few seconds later, this time louder. I looked to my right and a man in his 40s, wearing a gray t-shirt and cargo shorts, started rapidly approaching me. He got up close to me, really close, and told me not to go in that way since there was recently a lot of gang violence and drug busts in this park. At first I brushed it off and thought he was just trying to be nice to me, but once I said thanks and started back toward the park, he shifted his body between me and the park. He told me he knew the park well and that there was a quieter, secret path he knew and wanted to take me down it. My heart sank as my eyes darted around the perimeter of the park. There were no other clearly visible paths from the parking lot, and as he told me this, another person walked by and into the park. This man did not try to stop that other person from entering. He did not even look at them. His eyes were glued to me. I started to stutter and said thanks, but if this park is dangerous, I think I should just go. I started backing away, but he continued to press me, keeping pace with me and telling me I should go with him. Eventually, I just turned around and quickly walked back to my car, with him glued to my side. As I opened my door, I reiterated that if the park was this dangerous, I should just leave, but as I went to close it, he grabbed the upper part of my door and shifted his body between the door and the car so that I could not close it. He gave up on trying to get me to go with him. Instead, he asked for my phone number because he wanted to make sure I stayed safe. I was holding back tears at this point and trying my best to keep myself from screaming, but I calmly asked him to move. He did not budge. I caved, but instead of giving him my current number, I gave him my old cell number, which was no longer being used. He entered it into his phone and started texting, which gave me just enough time to close my door and lock my car. He knocked on my window and I think asked if I got his message, which I then just turned on my phone and nodded my head before putting it into reverse and pulling away. Just before I left the park entirely, I looked one more time to see him walking away from the entrance and toward the far corner of the wooded area. I still have no idea who this man was or what he wanted, but I still stay up late some nights wondering what would have happened if I went with him. I do not know if he saw me as a young boy who was alone and vulnerable, or if he was genuinely trying to keep me safe. Thankfully, I never met this guy again, and I was able to visit other parks around Florida without any weird encounters like this. When I was 17 years old, I met a friend from my old school. She had left before we graduated because she went to live in the capital with her family. She was also 3 years older than me. We were happy to see each other again, and she invited me to spend a couple of days at her parents' place in the capital. They were out of the city for the whole summer. Of course, I agreed. Summer came, and I managed to save enough money for a train ticket. The rest would be on my friend, she said. My mom was against this trip because she could not give me money to book a hotel in case something went wrong. She also did not really know my friend well enough to trust her. We were in a really bad financial place. Literally just enough to buy some food, and that was it. But me being a stupid teenager who was not used to hearing no, I finally persuaded her. The capital was a night away from my town, so I arrived in the morning. My friend was working her last shift before the holiday and would not be able to meet me for the whole day. That is why we decided that I would go for a walk, visit museums, and only go to her apartment in the evening when she came home from work. Her apartment was in the outskirts, nothing interesting to see there. I sent her a message that I was finally in the capital, and she replied with, "Okay, can't wait to get off work." I went walking for hours until my legs hurt, but I was overwhelmed with excitement. Evening came, and I was standing outside her place. She was not answering my calls. I knocked and knocked to no avail. Finally, she picked up the phone just to say she was sorry, but there had been a family emergency, and she was going back to our hometown now. In fact, she was already there because she had traveled by plane. My friend got the bad news in the middle of the day, went home, and collected her things in a kind of fog, forgetting about me completely. I could not really blame her, but I had some extended family in the capital, and I called them, but none answered. Later I learned they were all on holiday in Spain. So now I was homeless, alone in one of the biggest cities in the world, with nowhere to go. I did not even have enough money for one night in a hotel, just a ticket back home in 4 days. That was exactly what my mom had been so afraid of. Where was I going to spend these 4 days and nights? I went back to the station and tried to change my ticket for an earlier date, but there were no seats on any train. It was summer, high season. It would be foolish to expect anything else. Then I tried to buy a ticket on a bus that was departing in half an hour. The destination was not my hometown, but a city 100 kilometers from it. Good enough. But to purchase the bus ticket, I needed to return my train ticket and get the money back. The queue was long, and while I was contemplating, the bus left and night arrived. I went back to the station and sat in a chair, thinking it would be safer than outside. The station was big, well lit, and had police after all. There were a few unfortunate people like myself, mostly sleeping with their hands wrapped around their bags. I had never traveled alone. I had never been alone and homeless at night. I was still quite a hothouse flower. This situation was a huge shock for me. I was terrified, scared, and panicking. I think around midnight I started crying. Just silent tears going down my cheeks that I would wipe away immediately. But it was enough for someone to notice me. In fact, I think I was noticed even before that. A guy came up to me and asked what was wrong. I was so desperate that I told him everything. He started grinning, introduced himself as Ahmed, and said he would help me. But he quickly got pushy and invasive. I got up and sat a couple of rows down, even more scared. Then I saw another guy looking at me. Our eyes met and he approached. He sat next to me and said he had watched my interaction with Ahmed. He told me I did a good thing getting rid of him and that now everything was going to be fine because he, Jan, would be with me until the morning. He would then get me to the main bus station in the other part of town and make sure I had a ticket home. He even promised to give me money in case I did not have enough to pay for a ticket. A bus sounded like a good idea. Being less comfortable than a train, the odds of successfully buying a ticket were higher because people rarely traveled such long distances by bus. Jan even said he was sure there would be a lot of empty seats. He also said I reminded him of his younger sister, and overall gave off the vibe of a good and trustworthy guy next door. I immediately calmed down and believed everything was going to turn out well. We were talking for about an hour. Ahmed disappeared somewhere, and I no longer saw his eyes drilling holes in me and Jan. Then Jan said that we both needed to eat and rest a little before the morning came, and suggested we go to the other hall. That hall was unlike the place we had been sitting for the first part of the night. It was meant for sleeping, dimly lit and quiet, with an enormously high ceiling that we could barely see due to the poor lighting. About 10 people were in chairs, sleeping. In the front of the hall was a small cafe and a restroom at the end of it. Jan asked the waitress for hot water, then offered me noodles and tea. I suddenly remembered that every couple of hours there was an announcement saying you must never eat with someone you do not know to avoid your drink and food getting spiked. I immediately said Jan must eat half of my bowl and I would eat half of his. He was taken by surprise, but complied with my request. After we ate, I felt so much better. Jan and I sat in our chairs and started talking again when all of a sudden our situation escalated. It was about 2 a.m., still too early for me to go outside and ask for help. Ahmed appeared out of nowhere and attacked Jan, almost yelling, being very rude, and telling him to leave me alone. Jan calmly asked him to go and talk somewhere else. I watched them move a couple of rows back and sit there. I expected Jan to get rid of Ahmed quickly, but their conversation lasted way longer than I thought. It took about 15 or 20 minutes, during which Jan looked at me while listening to what Ahmed was saying. He nodded from time to time. His glance was cold and insolent, like I was no longer a human being to him. The kind and funny guy from next door had disappeared. Finally, the guys got up and sat on both sides of me. I felt cornered, but then it got worse. 2 more guys appeared out of nowhere. Ahmed said they were his friends, smirking. I freaked out and Jan patted my knee and squeezed it. I was happy I wore jeans. I would have hated him touching my skin. The guys were looking at me, laughing, talking gibberish, reminding me very much of hyenas. They were probably thinking there was no way out for me, and at the moment, it was hard to disagree. The oldest one said something to me that I did not understand. I looked at him uncomprehendingly. They laughed again, and Ahmed said, "You didn't understand because it was prison lingo. He's been to prison, hasn't he? What were you done for? Tell her. Doing something bad to a sweet girl like her," he replied with a smirk. All the men burst out laughing again. I tried my best not to look scared, but I do not think they bought it. Who would not be? There was a possibility they were saying it to make me panic, but the prison guy was literally sitting on the floor next to my feet. He grabbed my foot and started trying to lift my jeans up. It got to me that in just a second this disgusting, stinky man would touch my skin. It threw me into such a fit of rage that I pulled my leg back, nearly punching him, and screamed, "Don't touch me. Don't you dare." I leaned over, and I swear I was ready to kill him with my bare hands. He looked me in the eyes, backed out, almost falling on the floor. I saw terror in his eyes, and for a moment it gave me such pleasure. Of course I could never fight him, but this unexpected move from a teenage girl scared nearly to death really seemed to take them by surprise. The men were no longer laughing. They suddenly left me almost alone, with just Ahmed still sitting near. I started realizing what had just happened, and my whole body was shaking violently. I could not stop it. Ahmed's glance was full of hate for me and something else I was not able to discern. "What do you think will happen in the morning?" He pointed at Jan. "Takes you to the bus station?" "No, he will take you to our place, and you cannot imagine what we will do to you." And he said what they would do. For some reason, I do not remember it at all. Maybe my mind just obliterated it for the sake of my sanity. Anyway, I could not contain my panic anymore. I got up and slowly went to the exit of the hall. I tried my best to keep the pace very slow, even though I wanted to run. I felt that if I ran, it would provoke the men. They did not stop me because I had nowhere to go. Outside, there were probably more of them waiting for me, and even if not, it was still too dangerous to try. I continued walking mindlessly, and like a dream in the desert, I saw the police sitting on a bench that the cleaner had moved from the other hall while doing her job. I practically ran to the officers and told them my story. They did not seem to care at all. One of them yawned and pointed at the empty space on the bench and said I could sit with them if I wanted to. Police in my country are quite corrupt, so it was the best they could offer, and honestly, I was not expecting more. I happily accepted the invitation and sat with them. In about 30 minutes, I saw Jen approaching us. He was alone. He greeted the police, and it looked like they knew each other. At this point, I was not surprised by anything. Really, what were all these guys doing at the station for the whole night? There were no trains from 1:30 till 4:30. They had no bags. They were not sleeping or anything. They looked like a gang, not tired travelers stuck in the capital for the night. It was very possible they were doing all kinds of illegal business here, and the police knew and never intervened. Seriously, to even stay at the station at night, all passengers were required to have tickets for upcoming dates. I got mine checked twice when I entered the first and the second hall. And these guys? How did they even get in? That is why I did not trust the police. But I was also hoping they would not let the gang kidnap me in front of them. So Jan sat with us too. The officers even joked, "Is she your fiancé?" They all laughed and I did too. After that, they returned to discussing their business, while Jan tried to persuade me to get back to the dark hall. I asked what was wrong with him. I still thought he was the good guy, just playing along to pretend he went with their plans for me, because he could not possibly take down all of them. He got really agitated, practically begging me to go back. I eventually got tired and said no quite firmly. I could not think of any potential reason for me to go there, and why would his rescue plan even demand that? We sat in the chairs for a couple of hours. Every minute of it, I was afraid that the men would come for me, and it would be over. I was all my mom had left, but she would never see me again. I would become a statistic, another missing girl. I put all my strength into praying that I would forever be a good daughter and a good person if God rescued me from these men. I never prayed so hard in my life, begging God to save me, not for me, but for my mom, because she would not survive losing me. Prayers helped me calm down and cleared my mind a little. Now I had an excellent plan of how to get out of the station and the capital as soon as the morning came. A part of my extended family lived 3 hours from the capital, and trains for their station departed every 2 hours. Tickets were cheap. I had never met them, but my granddad was on very good terms with them. I only needed to call Mom and ask her to tell Grandpa to call his family to pick me up. I was anxiously waiting for the morning to come, and every minute spent on the police bench was a minute won. About maybe 4:30, I saw the whole bunch of men who had cornered me, including Ahmed. They stared at me with hungry eyes and greeted the police, shook hands with them. Again, no surprise. They passed us, probably wanting to meet the first morning train. It was from the capital city of the country Ahmed said he was from. Another hour went by, and Jan asked me to go back to that hall again. This time I complied. The police were already moving the bench back anyway. Plus, I saw Ahmed and his buddies leaving that hall, and most importantly, more and more people were arriving at the station in advance for the 6 a.m. and 6:30 a.m. trains. Men, women with children. I knew I had almost made it. In the hall, Jen offered me to rest on his bag that he had laid on his knees, but I refused and said I did not want to sleep. He replied with, "Well, I am very tired and it is too early to go to the bus station. We can nap for an hour," crouching over his bag and seeming to fall asleep. I decided to wait, not knowing if he was genuinely asleep and wanting to avoid confrontation with him if possible. I could ask any woman for help. I could go to the restroom and try to use their big, open window to escape. Still, it would be much better if I could sneak out while he was sleeping. I waited for a whole hour, pushing it pretty close, but I wanted the hall to be as crowded as possible in case he woke up immediately after I made my move. So I got up at 6:30. He was still sleeping. I made a few steps, looking over my shoulder. He stayed in the same position. I really needed to visit the restroom that was at the end of the hall, so I did it as quickly as I could. When I was back in the hall again, he still seemed to be fast asleep. I exhaled with relief and ran away. I called Mom at 7 a.m., calmly explaining that my friend needed to leave and I could not stay at her apartment. So why would I not visit my extended family in another town? She promised to get Grandpa to warn them of my arrival, and I bought the ticket immediately. Even if they kicked me out, I was not staying here another minute. It was an hour and 20 minutes until my train arrived, so I tried to blend in with the crowd, moving with them back and forth, hiding from everyone, including the police. Last night, I had gained quite an understanding of how corrupt they were. Once the crowd took me to the hall where Ahmed and his buddies had cornered me, and where I had left Jan some time ago, but he was no longer there. His chair stood empty. Was he a good guy? Sometimes I still think about him, but can never get an answer. I guess I will never know. Maybe it is even better that I did not get to. It was a humid Tuesday evening in St. Augustine, Florida, around 8:45 p.m. The kind of ordinary night where the air still carries the salt from the nearby Atlantic, and the streetlights buzz softly over the parking lot of a small strip mall. Sarah Marine, an 18-year-old who had just finished her shift at a local shop, stepped outside to catch her breath. She wasn't thinking about danger. She was thinking about grabbing a quick bite and heading home to study for her community college classes the next day. Sarah had parked near the smoke shop. The lot was mostly empty, just a few cars scattered under the lights. She fumbled with her keys, the familiar jingle cutting through the quiet. That's when she noticed him, a man in a pickup truck idling nearby. Nothing unusual at first. People come and go, but something felt off. He was watching her. She started walking toward her car. The man got out, tall, agitated, moving with purpose. Before she could react, he was on her. He tried the door of the shop first, but Sarah instinctively blocked his path. "What are you going to do about it?" he snarled. In that split second, her body froze, heart hammering, the world narrowing to his face and the truck behind him. He shoved her hard, his arm wrapped around her neck in a chokehold. The pressure was immediate, terrifying, not dramatic movie stuff, just raw, suffocating force. He dragged her toward the pickup, trying to force her inside. Sarah's mind screamed one thing: this is real. This is happening right now in my hometown. But she didn't stay frozen. Adrenaline surged. She fought back with everything she had, kicking, twisting, screaming at the top of her lungs. Not polite yells, but raw, guttural cries for help that echoed across the lot. "Help! He's trying to take me. Somebody help!" Her voice cracked, but didn't stop. She clawed at his arms, her nails digging in, refusing to let him shove her fully into the truck bed or cab. A woman named Kelly Eason, who had been nearby, heard the chaos. Kelly didn't hesitate. She started screaming too, drawing attention, moving toward them. The combined noise, two women refusing to be silent, rattled the attacker. He hesitated. Sarah kept fighting, pushing against him, her body fueled by pure terror and the instinct not to disappear into that truck. He tried again to force her in, but the resistance was too much. The screaming worked. He let go just enough. Kelly pulled Sarah toward her own vehicle. They locked themselves inside a nearby subway, hearts pounding, waiting for police. The man fled in his truck, but surveillance cameras caught it all, and deputies moved fast. Sarah later recounted it plainly. She was terrified of what would happen if he got her inside that truck. I just kept fighting back and screaming. Never be quiet. Always fight back no matter what. It was a close call, seconds away from vanishing into the unknown on an ordinary Florida evening. The kind of story that makes you check your surroundings twice when you leave a store at night. No Hollywood escape, just raw survival in a parking lot in America. Second story, parking lot ambush in broad daylight. Inspired by real attempted abductions. Continue narration seamlessly. 10-12 minutes. Shift to another American city, this time somewhere in the South, like a busy shopping area in a mid-sized metro. It's midday, bright sun, people everywhere. But danger doesn't always wait for darkness. Demi Lee, a young woman going about her day, had just gotten into her car after running errands. She locked the doors, started the engine. Routine. Safe. Or so she thought. 5 armed men suddenly surrounded her vehicle. It happened fast. No warning, just figures appearing at the windows. They demanded she get out. One yanked the door. Panic hit like ice water. She raised her hands, trying to de-escalate, handing over what they wanted. But they weren't there for a robbery. One grabbed her, pulling her back toward their vehicle. Get in. You're going with us. In that moment, something primal took over. No, I'm not, she said firmly. I'm not going with you. She punched the nearest man hard in the throat. Not a perfect strike, but desperate and effective. It bought her a second. She broke free and ran. Not gracefully, but sprinting, lungs burning, weaving through the lot. She pounded on car windows, 30, 40 of them, in broad daylight. Horns, shouts. Most drivers didn't stop. That isolation amplified the horror. People all around, yet no one immediately helping. She kept running until she found safety. The men scattered. It was an attempted kidnapping in the middle of everyday life, the kind authorities link to trafficking risks. She survived because she refused to comply quietly. No cinematic heroism, just split-second decisions and relentless movement. These close calls highlight a brutal reality in the U.S. Attempted abductions often happen in familiar places, parking lots, neighborhoods, during commutes. Survivors emphasize awareness, noise, and fighting back immediately. Trust your gut when something feels wrong. Lock doors, stay alert, and if it happens, make yourself hard to take quietly. Third close call narrative, the late night walk home. Ad for length, 8-10 minutes more if combined. Imagine a college town in the Midwest, like near a university campus in Ohio or Michigan. Emily, 20, was walking back to her apartment after a late study session at the library. It was around 11 p.m., streets quiet but not empty. Headphones in, but volume low, she'd heard stories. A van slowed beside her. The side door slid open. A man jumped out, grabbing for her arm. No conversation, just action. Emily dropped her bag and screamed immediately. Loud, piercing, repeating help. Kidnapping. She swung her keys at his face, aiming for eyes, and kicked hard at his knee. The struggle was messy, painful. He got a grip on her jacket, dragging her a few feet toward the open van. But her screams carried. A nearby resident flipped on lights and yelled out a window. Another driver honked and slowed. The attacker cursed and shoved her down, jumping back into the van, which sped off. Emily had bruises, a torn jacket, and shaking hands, but she was free. Police later linked it to similar patterns in the area. She credits immediate resistance and noise for turning a potential disappearance into a close call. These stories are stitched from real survivor accounts across the USA, Florida, southern states, Midwest incidents. They aren't sensationalized fiction but reflect documented close calls. The chokehold drag, the vehicle surround, the sudden grab. The horror is in how ordinary the settings are. For TDS, pause after key moments like he dragged her toward the truck. To let tension build. Stay safe. Situational awareness saves lives. If you need resources on personal safety or survivor support, organizations like the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children or local authorities have guides.